Hey everybody, welcome back to another world building bonus episode. I'm joined again by Eden.
Hello, hello.
How are you doing?
All good over here. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Before we get into this, I just want to put a quick announcement out there to for the listeners. I know we've been kind of doing a long string of bonus episodes really at this point over the last month or two. And I want to reassure you that the light of a new D&D campaign is on the horizon. I think I alluded to this in our Q&A episode. Keep your eyes peeled very, very soon for some news on that. We're hoping, fingers crossed, hoping that the next episode we release is going to be the first episode of that. But keep an eye on our social media pages for proper announcements and everything. It should be coming with you very soon. Yeah, that's pretty much it with the announcement. I'm so used to, like, when I do announcements, it's in the proper intro to a full episode, and it's like I've pre-typed it and everything.
And now you've got to shift gears naturally and
segue
into what we're actually doing.
Brain, get back into gear. How do you talk about stuff? Back to today's episode. There we go. That's some hosting. We're going to be talking today about... we're going to be coming up with a kind of sort of political kind of civil war style event that's happened not too recently in the history of our kind of homebrew setting of Vallanna, but like in the last few centuries sort of thing. I kind of had this thought of like the current kind of royal family. I've written a little bit about them. We've kind of sort of alluded to them in game a couple of times and that. But these sort of royal dynasties aren't always, it's very rare that they're the ones who've been on the throne for like thousands of years, especially, I mean, looking at British history, it's sort of chopped and changed, through wars and, marriages and all this. It's sort of the crown has gone where it goes kind of thing. So I had the thought that this sort of civil war that we could come up with was maybe the event that sort of saw the current royal family, the Inarans, sort of take the crown, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So it would be the rise of the Inarans to take over the city of Vallanna, the capital, perhaps. Or
Vallanna.
Well, that may have been Vallanna. Sorry, my pronunciation. You wrote all of these. I've got my own. Well,
it's the problem as well of like I think on the map the accent on the accent on the E is probably. Let me bring the map up. I think it's covered up, or at least it sort of blends into the background a little bit. Yeah, without the accent, it does look like Vallanna. Yeah.
Vallanna.
Oh yeah. I need to move that on the map. That is very. That accent is like completely unseeable unless you know it's there. Yeah. Okay. I will fix that.
So we're going to look back on like the rise of this family. How many generations back are we in terms of the rise of this?
The current year, as in like where we're kind of setting our current games and going forward. We're at the end of like 1307 in game. I'm thinking we're going back at least probably about 300 years.
Okay.
So it's a few generations, but like bear in mind, it sounds like a long time, and it is a long time, but like the current king has been in power for like 50 years, sort of thing. So in the grand scheme of things, it's like a few generations. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, because thinking back to the Tudors, there was at least 3 generations of them where they've probably been in power a bit longer. Sort of.
And it all depends on whether or not each of them has a kid that's actually viable to lead, because really a lot of dynasties in the real world just end where either inbreeding kind of gets them, or some member of the family's a drunkard or carouser or something. They do something to ruin the legacy of the family, and then poof, and the new family's taken over because they're the new nobles of the land. Yeah,
I mean, I'm kind of looking at our timeline, and there's a lot of births, sort of slightly more recent kind of things where I've kind of been filling in characters that are sort of either still alive or like have just recently died. Like I've got births and deaths and stuff. So there's a quite high concentration going back to just before the Demon War, which we've had as 1240 to 1247. But then, other than that, there's a couple of there's a lot of kind of larger gaps in the timeline. So I figured we could sort of crowbar it in somewhere. I'm just looking. I did kind of come up with, I guess at some point, I don't know whether it was related to like a World Anvil community event or something. I've kind of put in like a couple of random like kings and queens here, King Terence and Queen Camilla, at like 871 and 902. But yeah, I don't know. I unless I can figure out why I put them in, I don't see any reason why we can't take them out and put something in around like the late 900s, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And that gives space so that there can be there would have been another family in power at that point, and then we can lead into the whatever happens, whether it's usurping, rebellion. I don't know if you've got an idea on that front, and we'll see where we go. But
I think I wouldn't mind actually. We could take those out. I'll figure it out. I'll do all the back end work on the World Anvil page afterwards, obviously. Maybe like this is happening sort of about the late 900s. Actually, you know what? There's no need to take those names out. I've just looked and they're not actually related to any character pages, so I don't know why I've put them in or where I got those names from. It's fine. Maybe so. I've got Reign of Queen Camilla begins 902 after the death of her father. So here's kind of I had a little bit of an idea. So let me pitch you what I had, and then we can either tear it apart or use it. So I'm thinking like there was a king who was like he was an only child, kind of the last of the dynasty sort of thing. In my mind, he'd married someone in the Inaran family, which is the current royal family, and his like trusted advisor or like a close associate or something kind of coveted the throne. It was probably like a kind of Hand of the King style thing. He coveted the throne and he poisoned the king and his wife.
Okay. So straight up mutiny.
Yeah, straight up mutiny, but like he kind of like they sort of went along with it for a bit. Like it was, he got away with it almost, basically.
Okay.
Like nobody suspected or anything, and because the king didn't have any, brothers or sisters or anything, he just, he was married, but like it's a tenuous sort of thing to be like, oh no, so your sister was married to the king, and she died as well, so you get to be king. That's not really that's not a normal connection there.
But if there's nobody else around and he's kind of wangled the court, as it were.
Yeah. So he's kind of positioned himself as like a sort of almost like a kind of what would be the most natural person to kind of assume the throne. He's sort of, people are like, well, he was the king's most trusted thing. He was sort of a little bit of a kind of childhood friend of the king or something. He's throughout the king's life been sort of this person who's like, well, people would look at him as like, well, he's the king's second sort of thing. Yeah,
a highly connected individual who's going to know the workings of the kingdom well enough that as soon as the position opens up, it sort of looks convenient that, yes, everybody around him is going, well, he kind of fits, and the protocol doesn't really fit, but he fits. So
this is an unprecedented situation sort of thing. Like maybe it happened very soon after the king got married, because he suddenly realised, like, oh no, there's a chance here that I won't be able to get away with this if they have children.
Perhaps this is a spin too far. Tell me if you think it is.
Okay,
but I'm just looking back on the timeline a little bit further back. The Royal Vallanna Explorers Guild has been founded at this point and has been around for about a century and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
So perhaps it could be that, like, this guild of adventurers and explorers would go around finding historical locations. They could have a reputation for this at this point. They're quite well established. And perhaps this guy could have used them, whether it's through fair or foul means, whether it's coercion of one of these individuals or not, get them to provide evidence that perhaps maybe there's a tenuous link in the past, that nobody's saying 100% that he is actually of royal blood, but look at these series of events that they found artifacts that regard, and maybe the historians can look at it in just the right way that somebody can write a treatise and be like, maybe he's a rightful king.
Yeah, he's like he's a third cousin once removed or something. That's technically,
yeah,
something like that.
That would be the kind of thing that would play well in court as far as like advancing that idea without him having to do it himself. He could certainly get the wheels in motion to make sure that this treatise is written, but he wouldn't necessarily be the one to present it. So that's a very useful thing within that court.
Yeah, I like that. I had in mind. Did I say that I thought like they'd been poisoned? I think I sort of I might have said that. So I had sort of in mind that like after the fact, after all this sort of, I'll get to this. Okay, so basically, I was thinking then. So he actually assumes the throne and is in power for a little bit. Not years and years, but maybe enough that sort of, it's sort of legitimized a bit. But then it sort of somehow, like somebody tips off the Inarans, who obviously lost a daughter through this, that this guy was, the current king was behind it. And, obviously there's a bit of injustice there. Maybe in the time that he's been on the throne, he's sort of brought his own friends closer to him, and so by the time the Inarans sort of call for like, no, their justice must be done or whatever, he's got quite a few lords who are willing to back him, and then they've got quite a few who are on their side, so sort of battle lines are quite quickly drawn, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that would make, again, I'm always thinking in terms of court when it comes to royalty and what have you, and you would have the two sides of the court in that respect, the kind of the new blood, the ones that the new guys brought in effectively, that are all his friends, and it's quite easy for the other half of the court to kind of point the finger and say, well, they're all your cronies, this is evidence, this is a mark against you, you don't follow the old ways, and that could be a point of contention that would just build up over time, especially if this guy's taken power. Yeah. As you say, if he's bringing his own guys in, it would be the kind of circumstance where like he's not going to hear the voice of those old leaders. He's going to be looking to put new people in positions that he's promised them potentially.
Well, not necessarily all just bringing his new guys in. I'm just thinking more sort of he's made sure that the ones who he can count on, he's favoured. Like even if they were, old families that are still, were in charge of their lands for, generations or whatever, he's he's been able to curry favour with a decent chunk of them, to the point where this might be me being like, okay, this is simplistic just to make it easier for us, but maybe he's sort of the kind of north, all the kind of lands kind of north of the Drakeseat Mountains and going up west, just as a convenient sort of thing. It turns into a north versus south thing. I mean, and that sort of makes sense anyway, because, in terms of like messengers and things, it's much easier to get around, from a northbound sort of place to another northbound place. But if you're sending things south, you've got to cross the mountains, kind of thing. And then it's a similar thing, like the southern kingdoms sort of talk to each other a lot. Travel's a lot easier, if that makes sense. The southern kingdom is much bigger, but obviously the capital's in the north, kind of thing. Which I think would be how it eventually was decided. The southern people were able to put a bit more weight behind their sort of response to the whole thing. So maybe he's kind of like, he's consolidated like the northern kingdoms to, he, if not been able to woo them, then he's been able to sort of slyly kind of undermine those who would, be against him in that thing. So he feels like he's got quite a stronghold sort of in the northern kingdoms.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. And especially in terms of the lay of the land, as you say, the geography, I think it would lead to a lot of decisions like that, and the teaming up of the sort of north of the mountain, south of the mountain attitude. There's instant rhetoric. The political side of things would be very easy for them to sort of ramp up and get the peasants raring to go to fight against people that apparently they're part of the same nation, but they've never even seen each other's land because the mountain's blocking it. And then you can get the whole like not even part of our country kind of stupid thing going.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean and I think as well this gives us a chance also to sort of bring in like a historical thing of like in the West we've got the dwarves in the mountains. Maybe they sit this one out. Maybe they're like, okay, well this is this kind of petty squabbling. Look, we'll pay our dues and that. We're part of the country, but this is not the court that we go to.
Yeah.
This is so leave us out of this sort of thing. If you want to
fight above the above ground areas, then go for it.
Yeah. So in sort of relating to this, I'm thinking that the Inarans were originally like the historical like dukes and like the ones in charge of Vallanna kind of thing. And then in the current time, we've still got you guys are sort of trapped quite close to Vallanna in your time bubble. But then in the intervening centuries, we've got the king is in charge of the royal palace is in Vallanna. So that's where the king is. But really, like, the strongholds of the Inarans and that are kind of in the Vallanna area. One of the sons, I think I said, is the Duke of Serenal in the south. But, this could be the historical kind of lands are the ones around Vallanna for the Inarans sort of thing. That's not really important to the whole kind of war thing or whatever. But this is just like my brain going like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I can slot that in there. And things.
Yeah, we've done this before. Every time we've talked and filled in gaps, there's always this kind of like sense of, okay, we focus on one thing, but then surrounding areas become developed as a result, and everything gains a little bit of extra texture.
Yeah. So to go back to a point then that I sort of interrupted myself multiple times about. So I think that this kind of this king becomes known as the Poisoner King because it's kind of a cool title, like. From the outside, I mean, obviously, you don't want to be known as the Poisoner King if you secretly had somebody poisoned.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But so then, the Civil War, I don't know. We don't want to just call it the Civil War. We could.
Yeah. Got me thinking all of a sudden. It's like, well,
the Poisoner War or something, or.
Yeah. I'm trying to rack my brain for a second.
Yeah. Well, what I think so in broad terms, then basically that there's war for a little while. We can kind of come up with a length of it, but the overall outcome then is this guy is deposed, and I guess I don't know. Maybe I haven't got an individual character in mind because obviously we would be coming up with someone new for this. But then at that point, someone from the Inaran family sort of. Assumes the throne, and in general there's sort of grumblings, not grumblings, but the sort of feeling of like, okay, this is unorthodox, but hey, we had a civil war about this, so yeah, fine, sort of thing. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think in general? Is this sounding kind of cool or?
Yeah, no, the idea of a civil war and all of these political machinations, it's real. I mean, we've talked about it before, like everything's based on everything else. It is that sense of history that this is the way that things operated. And probably in many respects still do, but we've just got a bunch of different kind of like mores and words attached to these things. The courts aren't royal anymore. They're corporate in a strange way. The boardroom is maybe the modern court. So yeah, absolutely. No, let's keep going.
For sure. Okay.
I'm just stuck on the title for this war. Sorry, if I sound a little bit kind of thrown, I'm just mentally, my brain is on this. It's like, no, there's got to be a really good title for this. It's something about assassination and poison.
Yeah. Oh. Like I say, I'm kind of attached to the Poisoner King just as like a cool kind of like, sort of thing that you would call him. Like, I mean, because I guess
the name for the war, I guess, has to come from the victor.
Yeah.
Because he who wins writes history. So,
because we've got like the Wars of the Roses, although that was like a thing of like, there's the White Rose and the Red Rose, right? I don't know much about the Wars of the Roses. I feel like I should.
I used to know a lot about it as a kid. Growing up in Yorkshire, that was a major part of education. Like, they put a lot of focus onto that, but it's all kind of gone because that's 25 years in my past, pretty much.
Yeah, I know. We talked about. I think we did. No, not we talked about. We did more in my school about the like the English Civil War rather than the one that's called the English Civil War rather than Wars of the Roses. I remember it being touched on briefly, but
it's because we could go up to all the castles and things. Like I've been to a couple of the actual places where fights happened, so it's a bit easier to experience the history while you're up there.
Yeah.
But
As the Tudors and Lancasters against the House of York.
That's it.
Right.
It's a really stupid thing, but my mind goes to a stupid there's a Yu-Gi-Oh game that's based on the War of the Roses, believe it or not. And that's where my mind goes more quickly these days, because that's what I've interacted.
That's fair, yeah. If it's the only point of contact you've had with it for 20 years or whatever, then it's fair enough.
Yeah, it was mostly just that weird thing of like, wow, Japanese developers pick some unusual things. Like, okay, fights fought in like ancient Yorkshire, right? Cool.
But like anime style,
with cards. Nothing like that in this D&D universe.
No, nothing like that.
We've not got anybody thrown down playing cards and having animals jump out of them.
I haven't yet introduced the deck of many things into
true. Yeah.
Setting.
Give me time.
Yeah. Oh god, let's destroy the planet.
Back on target. I'm thinking, what sort of broader picture is there that we can fill in terms of like the Civil War, in terms of, because you've got the build up to it. There's the acknowledgement that this guy's a poisoner, and people kind of slowly but surely acknowledge it. Perhaps is he ruling from the north of the border or the south of the border? Sorry,
well, he's in the north.
He's in the north. So perhaps the word would spread from the court, from that side of the court that doesn't agree with him and kind of has their grumbling questions about what's happened. Maybe a little bit of word from there starts spreading southward, and it wouldn't travel so well up north, but merchants might take it south of the mountains, and that would potentially spread like wildfire, because you're not going to get the same level of loyalty to some faraway king. I mean, they're still going to salute not salute the crown. That's kind of some. That's
the whole point, yeah.
So salute the crown is some weird combination of concepts. It's not really how we do it. But,
I just had an interesting thought actually. In the summer camp episodes, Amy and I came up with an Assassin's Guild, and we'd sort of said that maybe like the one thing that they mostly rule out is like taking out of heads of state, but not rule out, but like they have to go into like full conclave before they'll accept the job. Maybe this was the last time they took the job.
Either that, or potentially you could have it that one of the members of that group was witness to the king's poisoning in some way, shape, or form, or got to study the king in some way, that they got close enough to get a look at his condition and immediately recognized a recognizable poison. And it could be that, I mean, this is up to you ultimately. It's either they're on one side of the coin or they're on the other. They could then turn around to the side of the court that's against the king and say, hey, guys, you know we're the assassins, right? he used one of those poisons that we know about. Trust us. Like, we can't prove it, we can't show you that he did it, but we're telling you that's the poison he used, and he's a wrong one.
He's a wrong one. Yeah, I like that. I had this thought as well. Okay, well, so here's the thing with that Assassin's Guild, is that we'd sort of said that like there's quite a lot of like maybe like minor sons of noble houses end up joining it, but then once you're in it, your identity is mostly a secret to pretty much even like the other members of it. So what if like a really like low down the totem pole member of the Inaran family was in it, wasn't part of the event, but like he eventually like he knew about it, and then he kind of like had like a kind of crisis of conscience about like he doesn't have any problem doing his assassin's work normally, but this job killed his cousin, and so he had a bit of a sort of like in their youth they had been quite close or something.
Yeah, and then crisis.
So he struggles with it for some time, which is maybe the amount of time it takes. You know, he struggles with it for a long time, kind of thing. Or maybe he sort of comes to the like he's sort of censured by the upper leadership of the Assassin's Guild. Like they have to remind him, like, no, you can't. You know, we've done our job. We've been paid. We're done. You know, sort of thing. Things have to play out how they play out. But he's so guilty that an organization that he's a part of would kill his beloved cousin, let alone the fact that it's, you know, she was the queen and you know, and her husband, and now there's this, you know, underhand sort of poisoner who hired them to do it on the throne. He eventually does sort of manage to maybe even in secret, he sends like a sort of almost in code sort of message to, you know, his relatives, sort of saying like, because they nobody would know, they wouldn't know that he was in it. This is the thing. Nobody knows who's in the Velvet Court, we called it. But he has this crisis of conscience and lets his family know, look, this wasn't an accident. The current king hired the assassins to do this.
No, that fits together nicely. That's
so. But in the time it's taken him before he's done this, you know, maybe it's a year or whatever. That's the time that the sort of new king has consolidated his power a bit, and then maybe some more time passes while they're sort of debating, like, what can we do about this? You know, vengeance, but at the same time, he's the king, and this would be a major undertaking, sort of thing. But yeah, that's kind of the thing. You know, the thinking is like, oh, you know, this was a terrible, tragic accident. Up until this guy sort of secretly comes forward and goes, you know, just lets them know this wasn't an accident. You know. Yeah,
and then that rumor spreads and eventually builds to that point where south of the border they could start having the lords and ladies effectively say to each other, like, look, we're going to have to do something about this.
Yeah, they start having clandestine meetings, sort of spreading like the sort of the news, sort of secretly, like, look, we're not going to let this stand, sort of thing. Are you with us, or are you against us, against this usurper king?
Yeah, no, it's a steady escalation. It would take a little bit of time, but there's a very clear. Yeah, and you can see it kind of building towards this fight. When looking at the map, it feels like there would have to be a major altercation, kind of around. Oh dear, the image. Sorry, the name on the map is hard to read again. Wild Ring.
Yeah, that's another one I need to move. That's Wild River. Yeah, that one that I've definitely got. Look, the thing is, every time I need to move anything on this map, I need to make a new giant JPEG and upload it, and I just haven't done it.
I can't blame you. It's a lot of work. You do more than most. But yeah, Wild River. Yeah. Around that area, kind of like, that looks like it's an obvious kind of bottleneck.
Yeah, there's a couple of bottlenecks. You've either got to go through the mountains, which the King's forces have got the Gates of Tormund Fortress at the one end, at the north end. Mm-hmm. You've got to go sort of past Wild River through that gap between the Drakesea Mountains and sort of the other mountains on the western side there. They're not quite as high straight away, but they are leading up to the Silver Peak Mountains. So it's still, you know, that's a bit of a bottleneck. Or the other way around, you've got to go the long way round past Rift View and that, which I'm thinking I probably will end up putting another fortress or two. Maybe because in our current timeline, maybe they are a little bit not derelict, but they maybe date from this period to when they saw the most action, sort of thing. Because that's the thing with this map. I mean, each square is 10 miles on a side. That's a huge amount of space.
That's it, and it would take time in feudal periods to sort of amass the men, amass the arms, amass the momentum, the food, everything required to actually make a push up or south. Either way, depends on whether the king was aggressive in his response to this. We haven't really kind of even thought on that front. But yeah, it would take time to build that up, and enough time that if, say, there was kind of a strike from the south through Shalefast and up towards the Gates of Tormund, perhaps once that's happened, there's enough time to erect some forts along those other kind of gap points. Something like that could be and over the course of maybe a couple of years, maybe 5 to 10 years for the whole process to play out.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm not thinking it's going to be this isn't going to be like a summer, like sort of. This wasn't over very quickly. I mean, the Wars of the Roses lasted 32 years. I mean,
yep.
Sorry, I'm on Wikipedia now. English Civil War lasted 9 years. I mean, I don't know. We maybe want to bloat it out that much. Definitely not the 32 years ones. But I'm thinking, yeah. I mean, because we've had the Demon War, the more recent conflict. That was like 7 years. But that was I've kind of mapped out the slow build on that. You know, it technically started at this point, but there was, you know, ebbs and flows sort of thing. So I'm thinking, yeah. I mean, it's going to, you know, this isn't going to be a one and done sort of battle kind of thing. This is going to be a drawn out thing, because I mean, so it should be, you know, this is a major kind of I don't use regime change. It has Iraq War connotations. But you know what I mean, though? It's sort of like, this isn't like one baron going to war with another baron over one castle sort of thing.
Yeah,
this is half the country fighting the other half.
Culture,
yeah. Okay, well, we don't need to go into full details about everything right now, but we should maybe think of like, okay, when did it start? So, mainly because I've got the timeline open. If, say, I'm keeping the names there as King Terence, that was the father of Queen Camilla, maybe Queen Camilla only had the one son, and that's the son who was poisoned.
Mm-hmm.
She started her reign in 902. I haven't got a birth date for her, but let's say she was 27 or 28, something like that.
I suppose like part of my is like, oh, she should be younger, but then it's D&D world, so longevity isn't quite the same thing. It's like people weren't dying at 40 and 50. People could just live on because of magic and what have you.
So let's say she was. Well, hang on. No, we should go through this backwards. So the king who was poisoned, her son. We haven't got a name for him, but that's not important right now. How old was he when he was poisoned? Would you say? I'm thinking mid-30s, because if the guy who poisoned him was like his childhood friend, he still would need to have time to build up a little bit of a base to the point where he's confident he could get away with this.
Yeah.
And if he's too young, it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the usurper, I think the longer he's been around playing second fiddle, whilst potentially, as far as he's concerned, doing more work, or whatever his attitude was. I mean, we haven't, again, pinned down exactly the motivation for him, but the longer that's been going on, the more legitimate it feels in terms of like when he finally breaks and just goes, you know what, I should be in charge.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said mid-30s, really, because I thought like by that point they're still kind of in prime fighting age, if that makes sense. At least the king is, the usurper is. Obviously, the other king dies. Not to the point where he can be included in maybe some battles, sort of thing. Without it being like...
If he usurps at, say, 32 and ends up fighting this war by 38, 40, I think that makes about the right kind of sense in terms of like, that's the right amount of time for the negative vibes to build up, for the word to spread throughout the land, for the amassing of forces, and for him to potentially kind of one day look to an advisor and say, what's happening in the south? They say to him, there's word, my lord. And then he's like, Christ.
Yeah, so he takes he maybe is a year or two older than the guy he usurps. So there's also that thing of like, I'm killing this younger guy, shouldn't be in charge of me. Not by a lot, but like, it's a steady, slow burn jealousy thing. Like growing up, he was still maybe a noble son. He's still from a noble family. But he always wanted that one step more that his friend just seemed to be getting given. And it's the slow jealousy burn sort of thing. So
especially as the older one, it would work insofar as like he would feel like he was both pushing them forward in terms of like he always might have known a little bit more of like age will just give you a little bit more information over younger people. So he might always have felt that way. Like, you're both holding me back and I'm having to drag you forwards. So let's cut off the dead weight. Yeah.
That was exactly what I was thinking with that. So maybe he usurps at 32. So the guy the previous king was maybe, should we say 30?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a couple of years difference. I'm just basically what I'm trying to is pin down a date here. So Queen Camilla, we're saying, was about 20. Let me get a pen. I'm going to write this. Pen. I've got lots of word. I can just type it. Queen Camilla, we're saying, took the throne at 27.
Yep, that's what you said. Yep.
About that in 902. Okay, because I haven't got any details for this, so this is a perfect opportunity to like flesh this out. Was she married, and had her son already been born at that point? What are you thinking?
Well, if she's married, then there's the argument of, wouldn't her husband have potentially a claim?
That is a point, unless he died before.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
He died before his son, because obviously his son wouldn't take the throne until the queen, his mother, died. And if he's 30 when he dies, how are we having her die? I'm thinking her...
Wow, how tragic are we going? It's the kind of thing where it's sort of like...
Yeah, this is the thing. Is she going to have maybe had him after she's already taken power? That way we can make her be a bit older when she dies. So that one's not a suspicious death. Or not tragic. Not like... I mean, she doesn't... I don't know. Yeah, this is tough.
Could be the kind of thing where... so she's had the kid with her husband. He's grown... there comes a point where her husband, like her son is now adult. Maybe he's 28, 29, just a couple of years before all of these events we're already establishing with the Civil War are about to take place. And perhaps his dad dies out on or maybe it could be a freak hunting accident. Or
I was thinking hunting accident, yeah.
Eat some bad food, something that's like a medieval way of dying. That's sort of like...
some bad sushi.
Yeah, he didn't really get... I'm not thinking fugu, but... but so something like he just dies of gout or something. Some terrible disease where it's like, okay, that wouldn't really get most people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and after that happened, the wife, the queen, she was heartbroken. She didn't eat properly. She didn't look after herself. She just kind of withered and faded. And the son watched this and then took power as and when he had to.
So we're thinking she was in maybe her late 50s then?
Something like that. I mean, it depends how... Yeah, because if she had him when she was like 27-ish... I mean, no, she took power at 27.
Yeah.
Oh, I have all these numbers in my head. I'm terrible.
Yeah, no, I'm writing them down. Let's come up with a name for the son. King... I was going to say King Ralph, but I feel like that's a movie.
It is. It's where an American finds out he's related to the British royal family. It's quite shocking.
Let's not call him King Ralph then.
King Louis? Film references?
King of the Swingers.
It's funny because you've got the realm of all possibility, and then it's like, how do you choose from everything?
Yeah, let me bring up a name generator because, just take it away from me. Take the choice away from me on this one.
I'm better with place names, I think.
Yeah, I think same. I can come up with fantasy names, but throw out a first name is like, oh god. Fantasy name generators, English names because we're kind of sticking with that. One of the ones that spat out is Ralph. But King Theodore, yeah, Theodore. Let's go with that.
Yeah, and he likes to be called Theo, and he's quite louche potentially, and that's another one of the things that irks the usurper.
Yeah.
He's a well-liked guy, and he's had quite a casual life up till this point.
He takes the throne also at 28. Okay, so we need to fill in. Was he born before his mother took the throne or after? Because then we've got a specific date that this kicked off.
I think before, and that way, when it comes to the court arguing about who's right to be on the throne, it just adds an extra kind of angle of, well, he was born before his mother even ascended. There's something to that some arsehole in the court would probably keep on about.
Yeah, it shouldn't. That doesn't technically matter really, but it's something for somebody to go, oh well, but is this really as Yeah.
It's the kind of technicality, semantic thing that somebody could just witter on about endlessly.
Okay, so
having witnessed arguments about the real royal family from people that I would rather have not been around, this is the kind of thing that goes on in certain circles in this country.
So, okay, here's the current timeline then. So, Queen Camilla takes the throne in 902. Let's say King Theodore was born in 900. 900. So he's 2 when she takes the throne. She had him when she's 25. Kind of, that's not out of the realms of possibility. If anything, that's the most normal thing.
Magically aided medieval lands. So again, and slightly older births, which I suppose that probably would be for that kind of in real world terms.
Yeah, I'm not sticking with to do that. Yeah, we're not sticking with real world like people were having.
The mage could probably come and do some kind of magical, not even cesarean, just.
They got clerics and stuff. It's just let's not worry about that.
The technicality of childbirth in D&D.
Yeah. So So she dies in 928 when she's
I'm going to
53.
53, but yeah. Arithmetic's not my.
Yeah, I just it's been a long day.
Yeah, it has.
So she dies aged 53 of a broken heart after her husband dies. How long is she hanging around? Is it very quick, do you think, or
a year at a push?
I think. Okay, yeah. So I mean, Queen's husband, what's he called? Roger. Roger's a terrible name.
Rog. Good old Rog, the president. President? Oh, God, what am I on about? I've got America on the brain.
Yeah,
the world's crazy right
now. Stephen. I don't know. I'm acting like he's a stepdad, and that's a proper stepdad name, but like he's...
Chris.
Chris.
Christopher.
There we go. I'm just typing this out for my own thing. So Christopher dies in a freak hunting accident. Let's say in 927. Then we got a bit of wiggle room there. We can decide how long, because I don't think it would be like she gets the news and immediately drops dead.
Yeah, it's more like I think that there would be a period of just extreme mourning. She's not communicating with anybody, and then maybe a little bit of communication. But
locks herself away, wastes away a bit, and then
maybe getting past the 6 months mark, it's the build up towards the anniversary, maybe getting to like 10, 11 months. And then
I like that. That's good. Yeah.
And it would be nothing else to think about other than that in her life. So she'd be stressing on the loss of the love of her life, and real duties can go screw themselves.
So within 6 months, Theodore's father and then his mother dies, and he has to take the throne. So that's quite a stressful time. I'm thinking he's helped through that by this daughter of the Anaran family, who, let's come up with a name, Daphne. There we go. Whatever. So maybe she helps him sort of deal with the stress and everything. They fall in love. It's quite a quick turnaround of marriage, sort of thing, because it's only a couple of years later. He's assassinated at 30. Mm-hmm. He's taking the throne at 28.
Yeah, it's a real tumultuous period, and I bet that's another reason for the court to be up in arms, because they would already be kind of, I don't know, pulling in different directions because everything's starting to get a bit shaky anyway.
Yeah,
and it just keeps happening, and then the usurper comes through, truly divides the court at that point, and the slow crawl towards the build up again. That's kind of like a crescendo moment. It goes quiet for a little while, and then it builds back up to the actual civil war happening. Yeah.
So I'm thinking they maybe haven't been married very long, and then this is where the usurper very quickly puts his plot into action, because he's seeing like, okay, they haven't had any children yet, but they might very soon.
Window's closing.
My window's closing here, sort of thing. So so here's the timeline I've got written out. Theodore's born in 900 AOU, Age of Unification. Mm-hmm. Queen Camilla takes the throne at age 27. This is his mother in 902. Her husband Christopher, husband Chris, dies in a freak hunting accident. I actually just wrote "dies in freak," which is probably not exactly what.
Dies inside of a freak. There shall be no explanation of this.
Nobody wanted to know.
You go where you want with that.
He dies in a freak hunting accident in 927. She dies age 53 in 928 of, ultimately we could say of a broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
So he takes the throne also in 928. He marries Daphne and Aaron, if we're going with Daphne. It just spat that out. I can't help but think of Daphne from Frasier, but that's...
we went Scooby-Doo, so we went two different directions. That's good enough.
He marries Daphne and Aaron in 929, and they are both, making her Queen Daphne. They are both assassinated then in 930, and what are we calling it? The usurper. So this guy needs to actually have like a kind of name that's like a sort of...
Time not to want to just go for something with some grim overtone. That or some formality to it. That I think there's something formal in a guy's name.
Yeah,
Lawson, something like that.
I want it to be like a kind of sound like a bad guy, but like at the same time, I don't know.
Renault.
Renault.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw names out there.
Names out, yeah.
Oh no, my mind's just immediately just going to Dragon Age for some reason. Logan comes to mind. Because it's weird, because then you end up associating kind of like syllables and things with tone of like there's a nasty overtone to the cra noise.
Yeah. He's assassinated by his best friend, Murder Man 27. Jim the Murderer takes the throne. Living up to his childhood nickname.
Oh dear.
Okay, hang on. Let's see.
It's so arbitrary that it's impossible for me to kind of just point a finger at something and just be like, that sounds good.
Okay, let's go with Edmund, because then we can at least be making a Blackadder reference.
Yes, and that's suitable. Yeah. He wouldn't actually succeed Blackadder, but this guy is well, you know. Blackadder would get poisoned. It'd be the last episode of the season and he'd poison himself.
That is exactly how the first season ends.
Exactly.
So yeah, Edmund takes the throne in 930. So we're thinking then he's in power for a year or so before the sort of attack of conscience of the assassin finally sort of gets the word to his.
I feel like there needs to be. Is there something in terms of like, is he a good leader? Is the question, because the conscience issue. I feel like it needs some kind of instigating event.
I feel like maybe he's
unless it happens straight away. If it happens straight away, then it just takes a while for the word to spread. Then that's one thing. But otherwise, I think there needs to be like something in the way that the guy's ruling an event that causes the conscience to provoke it.
Maybe this might be the current world seeping in, but maybe he's the leader who's only got his rich friend's interests at heart, and he's.
I was trying so hard not to go in this direction while you were talking.
Well, we don't have to.
The Republican Party were just going through my mind. So,
we don't have to, but it does make him easy to hate.
Well, yeah. That's what I mean, where it's sort of like to get to those moments of like, somebody looks at it and goes, no, this is all too much. I held my tongue for long enough. This is the drawing the line here.
Well, I mean, that's what I was thinking. It's like, okay, it's this, you know, the assassin relative is not immediately, you know, he's sticking to his oaths initially. You know, he's not happy about it because his cousin was killed.
Could it be that maybe this the guy in the Assassin's Guild sees the promotion of a particular individual that he knows to be kind of unworthy for the position and that will truly do wrong and harm the actual state itself by being in that position, and that could be the like he's looking out for the country as much as anything else in his action by raising his voice. His family was one thing, and he'd already forgone his family. He'd become an assassin. He could kind of deal with the fact that he wasn't being honest with them and that they would never live truly honest lives with each other. But if the country is being attacked from within by the appointing of this man, then, well, there's something that has to be done about that.
Well, hold on. So maybe he was a bit of a black sheep anyway. Which is, you know, he was never going to be the Duke or anything, which is why he was a bit of a sort of, in his youth, he kind of acted out or whatever. And the only one he got on with was his cousin, who would go on to be the Queen. And as they got older, you know, people grow apart, and he generally kind of left the family behind and went off and started his own thing, but then fell into the Assassin's Guild sort of thing. So maybe he wasn't that close, which is why it's taking him a bit longer. Although he's sad about the death of his cousin, it's more of a sort of, it's on a personal level rather than a sort of, I need to tell the family. It's just I'm sad my one person I liked in the family's gone kind of thing.
Have a moment where it's something that sparks a memory of like those good times, the fleeting good times.
Well, yeah. Spending time. But I just mean, like, so he's not, his immediate first thought isn't, I need to tell the family. It's just sadness that she's gone because she was the only one he got on with, sort of thing.
And then over time that builds, do you think?
Yeah, as he's seeing like the fallout, like the longer term fallout happening of like, I don't know, as you say, kind of like appointments of like people who he knows for a fact are going to be quite I don't know, not wrong for the job's not what I mean, but as you say, kind of like people with more kind of schemes that maybe as an assassin they've got kind of they've got ears everywhere, and he sees this new king appointing a few people who, as an assassin, he's in a unique position to know, like, oh, this could be the end of the, it's going to change the country for the worst sort of thing, because they've all got these plots to, I don't know, sort of really kind of enrich themselves, and I look, it's hard not to.
Well, no, let's go in that direction if that's what you want to do. It's your
I don't know. I feel like it feels a bit hacky now, to be honest. But I just mean kind of like, okay, yeah. He sees, if not like in a sort of like Robin Hood, like, oh, they're going to steal from the rich. I need to. No, they're going to be, terrible for the poor kind of thing. Maybe he doesn't even really have that much of a conscience about that. Maybe it's more on a larger scale of sort of like, it's not so much that the poor are going to suffer. It's so much as one's he knows are going to sort of have got some bad connections with hostile foreign powers.
Yeah, are you thinking more that it's kind of a damage to the infrastructure of the country, that this would be kind of like they're going to change the way things are done and potentially let that foreign influence in, and then who knows where that leads to?
Yeah. And
that fits the tone perfectly.
I mean, maybe sometimes some of his motivations aren't completely altruistic or like even like patriotic kind of thing. Maybe he has got some sort of odd kind of prejudices.
It could well be that he's like, oh, this guy's going to run the agriculture side of our nation. He doesn't know how to pull a plow. Like, where I've seen him handle carrots, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing with them.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, his exact motivations are sort of they can be, I mean, nothing's a one-dimensional. If we're going for I think we always should be aiming for something that's as multi-dimensional as possible with this stuff. As we've said, he isn't going to be, he didn't hear about the assassination and immediately run to his family and go, this was all a hoax. This guy hired the assassin. He's mulled it over for some time, and he didn't immediately act and tell anybody when he found out about it. He had his personal moment of grieving and not being happy about it, but then he didn't take it any further. It's only later on when he starts maybe sort of noticing a pattern of like, this is, things are starting to go downhill a little bit here, that he, and even then maybe he doesn't directly contact them. He sort of sends like a bit of a cryptic note, and they never find out it was him, sort of thing. He just, it's something very simple, like, Daphne and Theodore were poisoned. It's literally just like a one sentence. Daphne and Theodore were poisoned on the order of Edmund, or something like that. And it's not signed. It's not anything else. So he feels like, okay, it got too much for his conscience. He sent that, and that's it. He's washing his hands of it, and he's out. We don't see him again, sort of thing.
Yeah. He's not jumping into the center of the fray.
No.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense for his character.
Yeah. So he's the sort of catalyst who then they start their own investigation and start maybe finding some, the family then starts finding some incongruities with am I using that right? I feel like my brain just suddenly kicks out words sometimes that I know the meaning of and just goes like, yeah, use that one.
That's the correct use.
Yeah.
I'm looking up now.
As we say, it's been a long day. They start finding their own sort of, I mean, they've already maybe not been, they've not been happy with how the new king's been running things, but they've just sort of basically just been at the point where they're not happy with it. And then once they start looking into this sort of alleged, like, thing of like, okay, no, he poisoned her, that's then the reason to start gearing up for war. And then there's maybe like a bit of a slow burn then as they're galvanizing their own support, sort of thing. I feel like there's a lot of details here we don't really need to hash out exactly right now.
Oh no, I think we've already covered quite a lot of detail in terms of coming up with characters and what their behavior is over the course of these years.
Yeah. So maybe by the time that they actually sort of declare like we are no longer going to be bound by your rule, it's like he's been on the throne for maybe 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm. Long enough that it feels like he's just starting to become entrenched, and that it's now or never in terms of pulling the roots up, as it were.
Yeah. So maybe then, he's been on the throne for a couple of years. So I'm sort of thinking like he taking the throne in 930, and then 933. I've sort of in my little Word document timeline that I'm writing out. I've put Inaran family and the southern houses declare their intentions to. I don't know how would we put it, like resist the rule of King Edmund.
Yeah, to draw a line.
Yeah,
and I'm still racking my brain on a good thing. War of the Usurper feels potentially like a good one, because we've used the term usurper a lot, and it's got a good tone to it. It's got a good formality.
Yeah.
But beyond that, let me think.
Civil War. I mean, yeah, because this thing, like I say, the Wars of the Roses is such an iconic name, even if I didn't remember any of the details myself. Like I say, I like the idea that like history brands him later as the Poisoner King.
Yeah,
because by that point it's like it's come out, the story's disseminated amongst people, and it would have been anyway when they're going to war. Like, no, we're going to war with him because he poisoned Theodore and Queen Daphne, sort of thing. So the story's out at that point.
How about the War of Cleansing?
That kind of has ethnic cleansing overtones to it.
But then I'm kind of in terms of like just pure cleaning. It's purging of poison.
Yeah, I see what you're going for.
And purging it doesn't work because the purge's got connotations.
The War of the Purge.
Yeah. That's the next sequel, probably. God knows.
The Antidote War. I don't know. That sucks. My brain keeps getting stuck on like drawing poison from the wound, or
I'm on the same line of like there's got to be a nice wordy way of saying it that fits within the tone of like that's poetic language for war. I quite like I'm just in terms of good words for cures. Panacea is one that's got a good quality to it. I'm trying to work that in somehow. Like Panacea feels like there would be some good apt way of using that in terms of like the war itself was the panacea.
Yeah, that's
the Panacea War could be.
Yeah, I quite like that actually,
because it would be for the winning forces. Like we've purged the poison. He was the poisoner king, and his entire rule was a poison on the land, and that we were the panacea. We swept across the Northern Territory and cured the land of its ills.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, let's go with that then.
Cool.
As God knows, my brain isn't throwing out anything better.
That's as good as it's getting from me. I feel like I managed to pull something out of thin air there. Just as I felt like I was completely out of juice, it's like, oh no, there's a tiny drop there.
Yeah. So we're saying, okay, so it maybe lasts. Okay, so I'm just doing maths in my head here. He takes the throne when he's 32 in 930. They declare war on him when he's 35 in 933. How long are we going to last it?
I think probably we should have two major conflicts, I think. One, right near the beginning, where perhaps the South is feeling a little too confident, moves too fast, tries to take that pass up towards the gates of Tormund, and finds out the hard way.
Oh yeah, they're turned back. Yeah,
they're not ready to actually deal with that. That gives enough time for the king to then sort of order, look, establish some border forts. If they're going to try that again, we're going to be ready. And it also gives the Southerners enough time to kind of go, oh, we may have played our hand there a little bit too early. Let's redouble forces, think about this, and do it smart next time.
Yeah. So we're thinking maybe 5-6 years total. Yeah.
That sounds about right to me.
So let's say the whole thing's done and dusted by 939. Okay. I'm just, because in terms of like the first thing I'll do is put it on the timeline, basically.
Yeah, and then you can flesh out the skeleton from there. Or try and remember half. Well, you have to remember what we've said. You'll be able to listen back to it. But.
Yeah. 939 AOU. There we go. Okay, and it ends with. So we're going to end it with a member of the Inaran family on the throne, which leads to the family still being on the throne at our current current time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my mind, I think it would be. I don't know whether they put a queen on the throne or a king. I mean, I suppose it's not too important, really.
No, it's kind of whoever has the best claim at that point. I mean, if we've said that the previous royal family had fallen, well, that was kind of the end of the dynasty, as it were.
Yeah, like he was the only son of the
correct sense at that point. Again, whether or not it was initially done, maybe that's when the Explorers Guild or some historian could step forward and be like, well, actually, this family, if we go back this far, you guys have actually got a claim, and you weren't legitimate because those guys actually were ahead of you, but now they're gone. You're all kind of the guys.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking it would be. Yeah, I mean, no, that works. I like that. I in my head, I was kind of thinking it would be a thing of like, will they win the war? And there's sort of a general kind of acclamation of like, well, there's definitely nobody left from the king's side of things. The poisoned king's side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, his queen was a member of this family. So even though even though they technically as a family weren't on the throne, a member of theirs was married to the king.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it's sort of not a direct line sort of thing on like the crown side of things, it's like, after 6 years of war, it's pretty much close enough for most people.
Yeah, everybody's tired of people dying and kings and queens being replaced. Yeah. It's just kind of like, all right, that's fine, it fits. Just let's get back to being peaceful and liking each other again.
Just let me go back to my farm, please. God's sake. Yeah. Okay, and we can decide. I don't know. It'd be kind of fun to have a queen on the throne there, wouldn't it? Because maybe maybe she's the sister of the one who was poisoned.
Yeah. That's apt.
Yeah. There we go. Apt, I say. Apt. Could go even further and say it was their twin sister.
I have no thought on that one way or the other. You can add that little extra bit of flavour if you feel like you want it.
It's just me throwing in random details to annoy myself for later on when I have to type it out. But, and then, like, as this always happens, I always go like, yeah, that'd be cool, we'll do that. And then when I go to type it, I realise I haven't really thought through some of the stuff, and like it doesn't really work like timeline wise or something or whatever. Okay, well no, it's a sibling. Let's just say it's a sibling, and then they were leading the forces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go with that. Whatever. Yeah, cool. Okay, well, there's always. I feel like it's another thing. These larger conflicts, like we got the Demon War, where we've got maybe a couple of things fleshed out, but other than that, it's just like. It's a fertile ground to come up with new stories and things, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of space to play.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't need to come up with, like, the name of the battles or anything right now. Just suffice to say we've got a 6-year span there where we can say there was a civil war going on here between the North and the South. We know there was a battle near the beginning. We know who the people in it were. We know what the result was, and we know why it happened. So here's a 6-year span. Go hog wild, sort of thing,
There you go. That's that, and that's the podcast. Pretty much.
There you go. Yeah, right. And that is pretty much. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I unless you got anything else you want to spin on this, I'm pretty happy with the what we've come up with.
Yeah, no, I think we've come up with enough. There's more than enough fodder and what have you, and there's still space even within what we've said to sort of add little bells and whistles and bits and pieces. Should we need to go back to it in some way, shape, or form, or want to add to it at some point? There's no reason not to be able to do that. So yeah,
I mean, we touched on like the dwarves staying out of it. There's plenty of fertile ground there for like individual like little houses to have their own stories as to like why they joined each side or whatever. And what
they could have spent the entire time just debating it in the mountain. Just that there were two sides. They did kind of want to be involved, but they just spent the whole time arguing about it instead of fighting. And when they finally came out, having decided what they'd done, the war was over. The next set of kings, like the next dynasty, was in place, and they were like, "Oh, I guess we'll go back to the mountain."
I like if it was a thing. That's kind of like the Ents in Lord of the Rings. But like, this didn't directly threaten the dwarves, so they were like, okay, well, we'll put it to debate. But there's quite a few things on the agenda before that, so we'll get back to you. And they finally come out and go, right, well, we've decided we're going to throw in with the Anarans of the South. We think they have the better claim. And by that point, like, the war's over. Like,
yeah, I do like fantasy bureaucracy, because it can be that it's mostly just that people are either so distant from what's going on or so completely overpowered compared to what's going on that they just kind of go, oh, it's happening around me, but I don't really need to really give it my attention the way that other people are.
Well, the other thing of that as well is the that's in like contrast to the stuff I've sort of said about the Demon War stuff, which is in that case the dwarves were directly threatened, so they responded quickly. So this could maybe be like something that we've got as a bit of like a kind of trait of like, if they're not directly opposed, they're perfectly happy to let things run their course a little bit.
Yeah. They wouldn't. Nobody within dwarven culture would admit it, but quietly there was some subtext of like, well, the last time we did it is because we had to, and these guys are having their fight, and they're calling on us. Yeah, and we'll show willing. We'll send the Raven back and say yes. We'll, as soon as we've figured it out, we'll be with you.
Yeah,
but we're going to drag our heels for this entire time.
Yeah,
we don't really want to have a fight over it.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I think that's a convenient spot to end this today. But thanks for joining me for this, as always.
Indeed, my pleasure, as always.
Yeah. And as I said at the beginning, we're going to be having some news for you all very, very soon, hopefully, about the start of our next proper D&D campaign type thing. As I said, I know we've been kind of throwing a lot of what would normally be bonus episodes at you for the last month or two, but hey, the world's a bit crazy right now, so what are you going to do? Thanks so much for listening, as always. You can always find us on our social media pages on Twitter and Facebook. We are at Pretend with Dice. Come and find us on our Discord server as well. The link to that is on our Twitter bio, and it is also now on the About page on our Podbean site at pretendingwithdice.podbean.com. I think that's the site.
I believe so, yeah.
I feel like I should know that.
Site for quite some time, I'll be honest. I
have to type it into the description every time I make an episode, so I feel like I should be right. pretendingwithdice.podbean.com. And the About page there's links to all of our stuff. So, that's pretty much it, I think. We will see you all very soon. As I say, keep your eyes peeled for that news on our next D&D thing. We'll be back with some more story episodes very shortly. So, see you all later.
Bye-bye.